Thank you so much, Ian. That was sweet and short. And I already picked up a few questions to ask you based on those slides. Very interesting about the Starbucks and the new social trends. So let me invite the rest of the panelists onto the stage. First, Chief Commercial Officer of South Asia Gateway Terminals, Mr. Ted Mutaya. Please welcome on stage. And next, General Manager of Ansel Lanka, Mr. Ramesh Nanakara. And the fourth panelist for the day, one of the former chairman of Sri Lanka Shippers Council and another very influential exporter in the country, Mr. Suren Abesekara, onto the stage, please. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I'm very much interested to see two of my customers are also on the stage, so I have to behave myself. I cannot ask any difficult questions, otherwise we will lose their support. So I would like to start with Ted. When it comes to disruptions and everything that we have faced, Red Sea is a hot topic, and as a result of Red Sea, we saw that even Port of Colombo, volumes expenditure increased, and that also came up to a point that Port of Colombo also was running at up to the capacity. And Ted, you have been a promoter of the whole port, not one terminal, and we really appreciate for you that. And first, what's the current situation for everyone to know, how Port of Colombo is managing the situation with extra volumes and the way forward?
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning, everybody. Yes, it's said through adversity comes opportunity also. That is with no disrespect to the human element to those adversities. The Port of Colombo, just tracking back a little bit, you referred to, I think, congestion relating to the Red Sea. The Red Sea crisis has been going on for close to 80 weeks. If you cast your mind back to probably somewhere in January when we first saw some of the spike of volume in the Port of Colombo, lasted probably about 3, maybe 4 weeks. The Port of Colombo continues to do well, and I mean in performance, in the way we do our business. We can do better, of course, but compared to, say, 10 years ago, there's a lot more collaboration between the terminal operators and a lot more performance efficiency, which is why our customers, the shipping lines, came to us at that time of crisis at short notice. At the time of the Red Sea crisis, they came to us as a contingency. Now, it took us some time to adjust and normalize that spike in volume, but today there is not much noise, white noise about the fact of that so-called congestion. The port has, give or take, about 14 berths, depending on size of ships and so on. So at any given time, if you have 20 ships arriving at the same time, you'll say there is congestion, right? And which is what's happening, is only about 40-50% maximum of ships today coming into the port arrive on their agreed berthing window. So they tend to arrive in clusters. We've seen some challenges in the west coast of USA, some intermittent challenges on east coast USA, and typically those ships leave in clusters. Then they arrive to ports in this side of the world at the same time. So the port has done exceptionally well. The second time that we did have some pressure points was when Bangladesh was enduring some of its socio-economic challenges, at which time we had already advanced. In fact, we reached out to our customers saying we could see this going to happen in about 2 to 3 weeks. The customers who sort of took it seriously and responded managed that crisis much better than most others because of the fact of feeders unable to get in and out and the frequency of services per week reduced, which meant the capacity reduced. So I think the port overall, and thank you again for acknowledging that I'm not campaigning only for SAGT, because SAGT alone doing very well does not help the port. It has to be in collaboration with the other terminal operators that makes the Port of Colombo such an important player and a partner to our customers. Thank you, Prince.
Thank you, Ted. I think I fully agree with your comments, especially as a user of the port on one side. And we were really appreciated by our principals saying how resilient the Port of Colombo was, whether it could be the peak of political crisis, economic crisis, or any other crisis. How Port of Colombo had been very resilient, and maybe at the height of the issues, maybe we were closed only for about 24 hours. If it was any other port, most of the principals were saying that situation would have been disastrous. But Port of Colombo, the terminals, and even the trade has managed lots of situations very in a very positive way, and they are impressed about the resilience of the trade and the port, and I fully agree with you. And now I would like to come back to Ramesh, being one of the important exporters of Sri Lanka. And of course, we know that Sri Lanka is not in its best economic shape, and exports is one of the best solutions for us to come out of this. And but again, you are basically getting impacted by the supply chain and shipping and ports, the challenges. So what, as a international exporter, what are your plans to mitigate and these type of disruptions? Having learned from the previous ones, how do you plan to mitigate and to be more prepared for the future?
Thanks, Kingsley, and thanks, Rohan, for inviting. I know I might feel sounds like odd person in this panel because all are from logistics veterans, and I'm representing a manufacturer. Yes, as you said, we Ansell Sri Lanka operation is the largest of Ansell, with Ansell being a global supplier in the protective safety devices to both medical industry as well as industrial. So for Ansell, Sri Lanka operation is so vital. So therefore, how we manage the disruption is very key to the winning our customers and keeping our customers in tight. So yes, I think during the last pandemic, we all faced the same disruption. So one good thing was that most of our customers are also sometimes manufacturers, for example, industrial customers. So they also face the disruption. So it's very easy for us to explain if disruptions. But now, when that situation is gone, for us to explain whether it's Red Sea disruption or any other disruptions to the customer, if we have a delay in catering their need, is a challenge. So therefore, there we need to have a strategy how we're going to win that. So apart from, I just want to add one thing from Ansell point of view, though we are the largest now in terms of Ansell's, the manufacturing hub, but with the disruptions in the world, as you know, many of the manufacturers in the world, MNC plus the other manufacturers, earlier our thought process was you have one single large-scale manufacturing hub which caters to the customer, which would be ease, and we use the scale advantage. But now that trend has completely changed. Now we are looking at more scattered manufacturing locations, which can face those kind of challenges, as we say, geopolitical maybe, or other vulnerabilities in the world, but still you satisfy the customer need. So Ansell has not been no exception. We are also looking at, because how we scatter our supply chain in a way, supply chain network in a way, so that we can cater to those emerging trends without compromising our customer service. So that activity is going on. As we say, China plus one challenge is also affecting us. And so apart from that, in Sri Lankan context, I'm glad we see our port operators here as well. So yes, we do face now, since we are exporting medical related stuff, right? Medical gloves. We always seek for these A-grade containers because we cannot just ship it in any container, right? So we do face sometimes shortages of this. equipments in the availability which delay our shipments. So as we monitor our performance mainly, we call 2 KPIs, basically CTD, where we committed date of delivery versus RETD, where the customer required date. So we are always having a gap between that. But despite we have a gap, we want to make sure that whenever we commit, we stick to that. So where we face the main challenge is sometimes as now we clearly understood what are the challenges, because if you have the capacity to handle 14 ships and we have 20 arriving at the same time, of course the delay comes. So that's why we see that whenever we do early booking, but only 70% to 60%, we can actually load at the same time as we book, but because of the delays or congestion. So these are the things that we expect as customers from the terminal operators as well as the liners, how we can improve this to make sure that we can become a reliable person to our customers. Because another change that has happened in our industry is that compared to 3 years back, most direct shipments have increased. Earlier, we had 30% direct shipments and 70% we sent to our own warehouses. So that means we have a time. We can always have a buffer in responding to the customer. But now it's the other way around. We have 70% direct shipments, only 30% warehouse. So which means that the reliability in the port operation and of course our carriers plays a pivotal role for us to respond to our customers. So I think these are the factors we are considering in our all global supply network where we could locate our manufacturing so that we have that reliability. Because if you really look at some simple indicators like customer service, if you list down the ports in terms of customer service, sometimes the top 10 you don't see the big ports. So it might be few ports which are not even in the big list, right? So we want the ports to be always prioritize the customer service plus all the other key elements in one single. So it's very we don't find that at this moment. So that's a pain for a manufacturer or exporter who has to deliver the promise to our customers.
Yeah, I think very interesting. So it's more about the quality of the service than just the quantity and the number of services. Yeah. And Ramesh, just a quick one connected to that. I mean, of course, you as exporters, traders, you'll, in the last decade, you'll move into the just-in-time type of deliveries. And then came the disruptions, and we started seeing vessels not calling, vessels omitting, and even if the vessel is there, the container availability is not there because that was also beyond control of the shipping lines. Have some people gone back to the good old practices to stock cargo? This is what I have seen in some areas. I mean, what's the common trading pattern now? I mean, at one time, everybody was religiously following just-in-time, and then came the disruption. And how do you strike a balance there? I mean...
Yeah, I think you're right. Some went to that old practice, right? So we have to cater both segments, right? So therefore, it's important as a supplier to our customer. So we strike the right balance. We have the right mix to cater that need. So we are conscious about that because very rarely we can dictate terms to our customers because our customers are like the BMW, NHS UK, and those kind of customers. So they always dictate terms rather than we, right? So although we all try to pitch from our brand perspective, but so yes, I think we definitely need the balance. So what I see is that we need the support of the terminals, the carriers, that understanding this trend. I know I speak on behalf of one industry, but I'm sure this is the case with, I think Lawrence was at the very beginning, talk about the apparel industry. I'm sure that is much more sensitive to time, right? So compared to us, because the seasonality factor is a very important element in the apparel industry. So yes, so that is where we need that understanding and appreciation from the terminal operators, shipping liners, and all of those parties to understand, and that will give us the opportunity to further grow in this business that we are in.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So I think based on that one solution that we as shipping lines and logistics providers can do is, I mean, having heard this type of challenges from many exporters, what we have realized is sometimes we as shipping lines also fail in our duties. There are some things that are beyond our control, we cannot control, but giving that information in time is really helping the exporters, because sometimes what we do is we don't share the bad news fast enough. But if we share the bad news fast enough, exporters and importers will have time to go for plan Bs and to find solutions. But if we try to keep hiding that information, then they'll be in more trouble than the original problem. I think this is what that I have learned during these uncertain times. And by being very honest and open with the exporters, that will help them better to cope up with the challenges. Apparel industry is one of the key industries that really help Sri Lanka to bounce back. Being an expert in the industry, Suren, what are your thoughts on in the same lines? Like, you know, how do you all plan to mitigate and to be better prepared for future challenges in terms of supplying apparels and finished garments to your buyers?
So thanks, Kingsley, first of all, and congratulations, Rohan and SEIMC. Thank you for the invitation as well, for hosting such an international event. Yeah, so I'll take over from Ansel, talking a little bit about apparel, from rubber to apparel. We spoke about just in time, right? So with the disruptions, as you said, Kingsley, most of the high fashion or retailers who are into fast shipping or fast sales have moved on to just in case type of scenario. Because this time what we understood in terms of disruptions, as Ian pointed out very well in his presentation, is that it was not only at the time of transportation or transportation of finished goods, but it really hit this side of the production engine of the world, Asia. So your raw materials, your the way that you structured your supply chain, where those nodes were, China plus one, became obsolete. You know, you had to go into places where there was better connectivity, better verticality, sometimes in terms of how we operate as an horizontal organization. So apparel was not away from all that we spoke about. We've had multiple issues, and Sri Lanka being one of the best executors in apparel production, went through a lot of issues in terms of lead time. So much so that we did lose some business away, but now those countries that won the business are having the same issues, and slowly and steadily things are coming back to Sri Lanka. But in terms of our niche market, where we specialize in our ability to do the different products, difficult products, we've still got that niche within Sri Lanka.
Interesting. Suren, connected to that one, I mean, after the disruptions, we also heard the fact that many apparel exporters or buyers are trying to go for this concept of near sourcing. And we also saw that some of the apparel factories in Sri Lanka are moving out to other regions. And has actually that trend has stopped by now, or do we still continue to see this trend? I mean, one thing is Sri Lankan factories moving out, and then this so-called new concept about near sourcing it's real, or it's just a buzzword?
Not actually. So if you talk about mitigation strategies for these disruptions, what we are seeing in apparel value chains, retail chains, is that these disruptions need diversification. So the same old concept of having the cheapest location for your products, and then try to figure out the network movement to your destinations doesn't work anymore. So nearshoring, or we call it onshoring or reshoring, is quite real. We've now moved away from discussing from country to country, but more so hemisphere. So from the Western Hemisphere to East, or wherever we see there's less disruption in terms of operation, that's where most manufacturers would go to. And even from a buyer's perspective, representing a world-renowned brand, we also look at our sourcing very critically. And it changes every 6 months, to be honest. So we try our best to make sure that we stay closer to the industry and where the necessity to change. But what's important to understand also is the concept of verticality. Both relationships as well as integration has gone a long way, where everyone has a spoke in all the supply chain knots that you are having in the world. So somebody owns raw materials, somebody owns manufacturing, and there are certain people who are now owning warehousing in the US as well, to make sure these disruptions are mitigated and to have a full smooth flow of their customers.
Interesting. Thank you, Suren, for that. And Mr. Ian, so you had some interesting and very thought-provoking slides. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions at the same time. You can pick which one to answer first. One is the hot topic, which is Red Sea. We all know that Red Sea is there, and now it's there for more than 1 year. And based on all these analysis and fortune telling and all that, do you see an end to this problem? Because the moment that busy shipping route is open, I mean, lots of things are going to change again. That's my question number 1. And on the other side, in the United States, now we have a new president, and everybody is waiting and watching what he's going to do, because even as a country, we Sri Lanka depend a lot on US. I mean, we ship a lot to US, and that will really have an impact. I mean, what are your thoughts? What are your expectations?
Okay, I think I'm not an expert on economics or politics, but I think I'm like everybody else around here, right? I think the Red Sea crisis will be a prolonged crisis. I think we all agree that it's going to be around 2025. I think even the shipping lines say the same thing, right? I mean, I used to have a shipping line background, right? And that's how I know Ted from many years ago down in Australia. And in those days when we were running shipping lines, we worked on trying to create an optimum service, the best just-in-time, great service. We were competing 21-day transit times from Hong Kong to Singapore to Europe, first port, dwell times 3 days, 72 hours, 48 hours in transit in transshipment hubs. And shipping lines lost money. We lost money. I left shipping industry because every year, every 6 months, we were redoing our budgets. We were losing money like no end. What happens? The world goes upside down. Shipping lines make a ton of money. Yes, we had the Red Sea crisis. It could have been catastrophic. But we also talk about supply and demand and ordering of ships. The excessive ship orders saved the supply chain, as we saw with the extended transit times that were going around the Cape of Good Hope. So I think shipping lines have learned to manage capacity, the supply and demand, and I think that's where it's going to find its own new equilibrium. We talked about 2023 being a bad year for shipping lines, but it didn't go to the red. In the past, we were all red. For many years, 10 years, 15 years, we were in the red. Right? So this is a rationale that I have, that consumers will continue to demand. America, with Trump, of course, he's already announced tariffs to so-called friendly locations. I mean, China-friendly they were, unfortunately. So Canada and Mexico are going to get hit, right? It translates to inflation. But I think we've become a consumer-conscious, consumer-hungry society. We're having a discussion yesterday on the bus with IFTI, and we said, post-COVID, what has happened to our mindset? We used to go online and order stuff. In the old days, it said 3 days. If it doesn't come on the third day, you're already calling the call center and saying, where's my stuff? Today, the disclaimer is 3 to 5 days. And rest assured, I don't think all of us call on the 5th day. We give it another couple of days, and on the 6th or 7th day, we'll call and say, by the way, where's my product? And then the guy says, yeah, and you accept it. So I think the consumer pattern has changed, right? And they said just in case is there because you build that buffer stock as a contingency. So coming back to the point is all these things will happen, but trade will continue to move. And the cogwheels in trade, whether it's ports, whether it's shipping lines, whether it's supply chain manufacturers, or the forwarders, will make it work. We're very resilient. Nothing stopped with all this drama that we're supposed to have had in the last 3 years. Right? It does support each other. It's all interlinked. So in a nutshell, yes, there will be trouble, there will be pains, but this group, which is in this industry, a very resilient bunch, and will be creative and come up with answers.
Thank you. So I would like to go back on one of the comments made by Mr. Ramesh, saying that in this big house where there are lots of shipping and logistics experts, he said he feels like a misfit. It is not the case, and we do all this basically to facilitate trade, right? We as ports, terminals, and shipping lines, we are making all these efforts basically to facilitate trade. So never feel that you are a misfit here, and everything happens because of you. I mean, we shipping and ports are there because of trade. If trade is not there, we are not there. So we are a support service, and we would like to acknowledge that. In that light, Ted, I mean, port, of course, plays an integral role of this, and shipping lines on the other side. How can we together make their life little better as ports? I mean, without playing our traditional roles and in our own verticals, how can we help them better in case of an uncertain scenario, in a disruption? How terminals can play a better, more closer role to help exporters and importers to have more predictable supply chains? Your thoughts on that?
Technically speaking, our terminal's immediate customer is a shipping line. So the importer-exporter becomes our customer's customer. But understanding that makes it much better for us to build that relationship with our customers. We can't be everything to everyone. We'll end up doing nothing to everybody. So I think the terminal focuses on what it's essentially, why does it exist? And our existence is to turn around ships as quick as possible. Now, quayside efficiency is brought about not by the crane driver going fast like a madman. It is also brought about by the landside discipline. So if you looked at pre-COVID, the container dwell time, average container dwell time, transshipment dwell time at SAGT rather, was under 3 days, right? Which is how we achieved 2 million TEUs on a terminal designed for 1.1 million, right, through efficiency. During COVID, it hit double digit, which means that containers are dwelling in the terminal yard much longer, which means I can't handle the next ship because there's no space to put that discharge. So of course that then disrupts the importer-exporter community. So we learned some lessons from that, which is why we also introduced, or we bought 30 ITT trucks ourselves to control that distribution. The disruptions that we encountered during Red Sea and Bangladesh more recently, the dwell time went up to 6 days, right, where we were able to quickly operationalize and start to better manage it. So how do we do better, and how do we mitigate some of these challenges that might happen beyond our control? Sailesh presented a very good slide there where he says, look at all the risk factors, potential risk factors. I think Ian also presented. Then you look at one column saying, what is the likelihood of that happening? And then you look at the likely impact. So I think, Sailesh, you presented 2 key ones that we picked up. We also have a similar risk grid map that we track periodically. The two that are highly likely to happen is climate challenge and also relating to political conflict. So those two are the most likely to happen, and there is also quite high in regards to impact. So I think each terminal, I'm sure each business will also do such to start to mitigate. We do a whole lot of other stuff as well. Monitoring what's happening around the world. A ship running into a crane. What would happen and how would we manage that? So simple things like that at a more tactical, more localized level. In doing that is how you start to manage. Now you might prepare for 150 things, only one might happen in that year. But the fact that we prepared for that puts us in much better position that we are not surprised. When it does happen, we are much better equipped to operationalize, which is exactly what happened with the COVID. We hadn't prepared for COVID, but we prepared for the eventuality where staff could not come and go home between work and home. So we were able to quickly operationalize staff staying on site. And Port of Colombo is one of the few ports in this region, definitely, that didn't close for a single day during COVID. Right? Now, we don't celebrate that much, we don't market that much, but it happened, everybody said, matter of fact, and we move on. Right? So I think we have learned lessons from that, and we will continue to learn lessons as a port, as a terminal, and as various stakeholders. If I can just elaborate a little bit more with your permission, Kingsley. I have to look at notes here because I scribbled down yesterday. Mr. Premachandra, former Managing Director, SLPA, referred to likely developments. So we are talking about adversity, but there are other developments that we should be prepared for. He talked about relay as an evolving method to transshipment. So no longer transshipments, but probably relay, big ship to big ship in Port of Colombo. We haven't talked, or I haven't heard so far, anybody talk about the growing concerns for the seafarer well-being. Right? So somebody jumps on a ship, typically most of the crew now is coming from East Asia, Southeast Asia, and South Asia. They're going to be on voyages going a long, long time. Right? 3-4 months sometimes, not necessarily one voyage, but they might do repetition. So this relay model might solve one of those because you'd have big ships coming from, say, Shanghai, turning around in Colombo. Another big ship going from Colombo to Europe or East Coast USA. Right? So these are opportunities which we need to start to prepare and think about how well, because no one terminal today in Colombo can handle all of this business for a shipping line, at least not for the top 3, top 4. So we need to think about how that relay can happen. I'd also like to pick up on what Salia Senanayake said. He says, look, shipping lines come to Colombo when there is dramas in other areas. Right? How can, I think Dashma also mentioned that point very well, how do we as a Port of Colombo present ourselves to be the primary? So not as a secondary when things go wrong somewhere else, but how can we change that network? It's doable because ours is transshipment cargo. There was a lot of debate yesterday about India being gateway versus Sri Lanka being transshipment. Right? And Sri Lanka continues to Port of Colombo, must continue to position itself as complementary to India. 1.4 billion people, trade is growing, and Sailesh already presented very strong numbers for the next 5 years. Right? In terms of South Asia, very likely it's going to be the center of global trade activity, at least for sourcing. Those are the sort of points that we prepare on to mitigate. So what SCAGT is doing going forward, just one more minute, we are looking at automated gates. Right? So today, a truck comes in, somebody sitting at the gate puts the content number in, probably takes 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Right? We are going to automate it. It's pre-received. Already we know as the truck driver drives in, overhead board will tell him, go to lane number what. We've just taken 3 minutes possibly at a very conservative estimate out of that supply chain delay. Right? We're going to have a 24-hour vehicle booking system where importers and exporters will book just like we do for our medical appointments. So you turn up 10 minutes before your appointment, you don't clog up the street or the parking bays outside, and that will increase it. It allows us to then prepare, knowing tomorrow I'm going to have container 1, 2, 3, 4 coming at this time. In the slowness of early hours of the morning, we can prepare for the next day. So we are improving that efficiency. So that will address some of your concerns. It'll take out the hidden cost in the supply chain, which is truck detention, right? If you got a bill which is after 3 weeks after the event, there's no way you can validate if that happened or not, right? So the other side is we are also using optical character recognition for containers coming in, as I mentioned, off the side of the ship, for container condition, for seal checking, seal intact, and all those sorts of enhancements, which is automation driven. So those are some of the stuff that we are doing to improve the terminal productivity and consequently the port also.
Thank you, Ted. And I would also like to appreciate when the issues connected to congestion was there, how all terminals collaborated with each other to come up with a solution, especially when it comes to interterminal trucking. And that's nice thing to see in a port where we have technically competitors inside, but they all work together and try to come out of the situation together. So it's a progressive thing to see in a port. And with that, I would again like to open the forum for questions. So if anybody has any questions, please pick up a mic and don't hesitate to ask any questions while we continue with the questions. And while you warm up with the questions, do we have a question in the house? Yeah. Yes, Michael.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. It was very informative. My question is to Ian. This is Michael from Haley's Advantage, by the way. So my question is on seafarers. So I know we were talking about a lot of disruptions, Red Sea and many others, political and conflict. But in terms of seafarers, we feel like there is a kind of shift towards not getting into that type of work. And though there are many vessels being churned out, could there be a major disruption where we can't find seafarers in the future, in terms of the type of large vessels that are coming out and the requirement for seafarers? So would this be a disruption in the future? That's one question. And also, what are your thoughts on, self-navigating, automated vessels that may be coming out in the future? Is there a future in robotics for, in the maritime industry?
Yeah, I probably speak as an ex-seafarer. I'm a master mariner by profession, so I quit, right? Because the life didn't quite suit me, even though I'm 4 generations at sea, my grandfather, father, great-grandfather. So I think seafaring is a calling. If people want to do it, you will, once you're in it. It's the same like in logistics, right? I've been in shipping most of my life. As I said, I started as a seafarer. I can't get out of it. I always say I want to do something different. I've opened a restaurant. I ran a successful restaurant. I end up going back to shipping. So it's in your blood. It's in there, right? It is a problem. I think today we get seafarers from the Eastern Bloc. We get it from China. The only saving grace is I think there has now been a threshold on reduced manning. We've not gone down to the crazy numbers people are talking about of 12 people at one time on bulk carriers. Now I think there's a stable equilibrium. And I think a lot of countries are encouraging a seafaring profession. Even in Singapore, for example, where I'm from, it was a dying profession. Now they have different schemes that encourage older people who've been laid off at the age of, say, in their 30s, to pursue, given a second opportunity to go into seafaring, right? So it has to become an attractive profession again. The money is decent, all right? It's not as great. It's always been a problem. There's always been a lag. But of course, it's tax-free. There's certain benefits which are still luring people to sea. That's the first question, the first part. The second one is autonomous vessels. We do a program called Connecting Ports, on HBC, on LinkedIn, and my colleague here, Christina, she runs the show, and we have one coming up in December, next week, December 5th, I believe. But the previous one we did actually was on autonomous vessels, and if you know, in Scandinavia, they're quite big in that. In Norway, even in Singapore, they're trialing hovercraft within the city. As you know, Singapore has a lot of ship chandling and stuff like that goes out to OPL. They're trying to use autonomous vessels for that. Will it come in? I think not in a big way, not immediately. There's not going to be but in anything else, there will be a tipping point where it'll come to play, but I don't see it happening on the large mega ships, right? I don't see it on tankers, you know. You still need to get the ship into port. You still need to, as we heard from earlier speaker, 60% is efficiency of actually executing cargo operations, 40% is idle time. I can only see that time going up with autonomous vehicles, autonomous vessels, somebody having to control it from afar. Although, that being said, I think it's a few months ago, I think one of the, I think it was DNV or BV has already got approval for ships to run with chief engineers sitting in office. You know, I am totally, as a seafarer, I'm totally uncomfortable with that scenario, all right? But who knows, you know, but the industry evolves. You know, unmanned bridges were the norm at one time. You had alarms, you rang, you didn't press a button every 30 minutes or one man on top. The rest of the ship woke up. So it will evolve, but I think it is still an attractive profession, and I encourage people to take it. You know, at least in your youth, you get to see the world, even though not so much on container ships, but you still get to see the world.
Thank you. Yeah, I think just to add a few things to that great question about seafarers and coming from principals, ship owners, I think still the demand is there. All what they're asking is, don't just produce the same old deck cadets or ratings, because ships are changing. Ships are getting more modernized, new technologies, LNG ships, and hydrogen to biomethane to all that. So they expect Sri Lanka to produce the people who are suitable for the new ships, rather than just giving out the traditional. So, for example, my own experience, CMA CGM use, they have about 600 Sri Lankans working on CMA ships. They want that to go up to 2,000, right? So they're ready to give 1,400 more opportunities, but we don't have the people with the right technology to work on a LNG ship so I think there are lots of crew training owners and the houses here in this house, so that's a learning from us, coming from many principals. They expect us to produce the people who are ready for the new types of ships.
Yeah, the only thing I like to about seafarers is now with the modern fuels coming in with ammonia, and eventually it goes to hydrogen and all these other new green fuels. Please don't forget to retrain the existing seafarers on how to do bunkering, because it's no longer just plug a hose. You know, as you know, the current fuels that ships are using are heavy fuel and diesel. They're not as highly combustible as anything else. The new fuels, you can be burning and you won't even know you're burning, right? So you need to retrain these fuels, upskill these people, right, for the new fuels when they do come down.
Any more questions from audience before yeah.
So thank you very much for organizing this event. I'm Sanket Archa here from CL Synergy. My question would be, as a Sri Lanka workforce, how ready, this is an open question for the panel, how ready as a workforce in Sri Lanka for the automation and the new challenges? And what are the things that as these organizations are doing to bring up these needed skills in our workforces? Is there any programs or is there any discussions with the current government?
Yeah, Ian.
I really don't know about what's going on in Sri Lanka, so I really can't say very much. But I think in this industry of ours, we are one of the slowest to uptake of, particularly on the terminal side, uptake of modern technology, right? We need to move faster. Otherwise, as I said earlier on, we will not get the young people excited to come to this industry. As I think yesterday, Jonathan Goldman from said, you know, 4 billion papers moved around every day, you know, just in trade. You know, the little things like this, you know, we buy our food on the phone, we get our clothes on the phone, but we're still so traditional in a lot of ways in what we're doing, right? So I think this is something that the industry as a collective needs to look at. But as far as for Sri Lanka, I'm not sure.
Would you include gender equality in that as well? If you do, then I'm very proud to say that SAGT has just taken on about 15 female cadre into operations, and they're going to be working shift as well. You're quite right to say that the type of worker is evolving. A lot more smart work is required, so that presents a lot more opportunities to what we would regard as traditionally male-dominated jobs. So that's opening up, and we are very proud to say that we are working closely with NITA and other entities. Kingsley, maybe I should pull you in here because you're not going to promote ICS, but ICS as an education founder, what might you all be doing in that regard also? Might be useful to share.
Exactly. So thank you. So I'll also take that question on me as well. So that's a very good question. How ready are we? Of course, when it comes to automation, maybe we are not in par with Singapore or Rotterdam yet. But if you take in certain areas, we are ready. We have the best simulator in the Southeast Asia region in Sri Lanka. And certain terminals are anyway training people on automation and all that. So we are somewhere there. But when it comes to other technical skills, I think shipping used to be a very kind of a traditional and mysterious industry, good old days. There were no proper qualifications, but now there are enough opportunities for people to get trained. Starting from the government itself, since you asked about the question of government, so if you take our universities, University of Moratuwa, they have a separate faculty for transport and shipping, and they specialize last 2 years in shipping in the Moratuwa transport faculty. Colombo economic faculty has started included shipping into their 3rd year, so that we also go and do a lot of guest lecturing and all that to support them. And we have a separate university in Sri Lanka called Ocean University for people to get trained under shipping and fisheries areas. So this is what's happening on the government level. So at least so far they have some direction in that sense. And when it comes to the other institutes, as Ted said, so even at the level of associations, let's say Sri Lanka Freight Forwarders Association, who's a strategic partner of this event, they have three international level courses to train Sri Lankan workforce to be ready for future, with collaboration with FIATA International, and also Shippers Academy itself is there to train people, and I'm the chairman of Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers UK here. So, I mean, many in Sri Lanka, they have the passion and they are voluntarily, they are in the training area to train people, and CASA also has got in touch with the University of Colombo to train people. So maybe, I think it's a matter of awareness. Our industry do not know much about the courses and the trainings available. Maybe that's where something that we really need to improve in terms of creating the awareness that what training opportunities that are there. But yes, opportunities for training for people is definitely there. I think once again we heard the beep, and we are up for time. But just to finish, since we have 2 important export houses here, my last 2 questions would be to them. Ramesh, I mean, let's say, hypothetically spoken, I mean, if I appoint you as the Minister of Trade and shipping for next 2 minutes, what do you expect? I mean, what better things can be done in Sri Lanka for you to have more exports? Even from a shipping lines point of view, what do you expect us to do better for you to satisfy your buyers and to have smooth and seamless supply chains?
Yeah, I think, as I said, it's a service level improvement, right, and reliability, because as you very correctly said, customers expect even the bad news to be brought out early, right? So that's they are willing to accept. So I think Sri Lanka has great potential to exports, as as I said, for the company that I represent has the largest manufacturing footprint in Sri Lanka, because for a reason, because of the skill and the potential, not because of anything of raw material per se, because we are in the rubber industry, because most of the rubber we are using for manufacturing synthetic rubber, which is not manufactured in Sri Lanka, right? So, but still we have it because with the right reason. So I think we have definitely opportunity to grow. So I think from a logistic point of view is where we need that support, that infrastructure, as you call about automation, and more integration between, we are talking about multimodal transport now. So for us, if we have one interface who can coordinate the rest, that's what the logistic provider can provide us with a single point of contact. So I think we still deal with multiple parties in terms of tracking the shipment up to the customer. So it can be one person who can interface. That would be the most easiest way for a manufacturer in that point of view.
Thank you, Ramesh. So my last question to close the session is to Suren, the same question. I mean, you are dealing with some of the biggest brands in the world, limited brands and Victoria's Secret and all that. So what do they really forecast, and what do they expect from Sri Lanka? And last comments about, how we can move forward.
Yeah, I think mainly, not even apparel, but everybody who exports out of Sri Lanka are mainly concerned of their dependability. Their dependability on time, their dependability of quality, and their dependability of full order fulfillment, right? So we have been doing that right in Sri Lanka because of the disruptions we all spoke about. There have been several lapses, but I think the message that I want to leave with the audience here is particularly on risk management. We have seen most of these disruptions in our working life. Port strikes, then terminals canals getting blocked, and then wars. But what we don't learn is how to mitigate this in the future. So I think every company should, as Ted said, should have a good risk identification method, register, and then employ mitigation tactics. With that, any disruptions that's coming in the future, we should be able to manage, and that goes for apparel and other production exports out of Sri Lanka as well. I think that's what we need to make more mind time on, to make sure that each link in the supply chain is risk mitigated.
Thank you, Suren. So with that, I think the message is very clear. It's not about, trying to plan too much about the uncertainties. It's all about, be ready for the changes and have that resilient mindset, right? Not to take uncertainties and disruptions as challenges, but to see them as an opportunity and on how to move forward. So having that positive mindset and resilience, I think will make the game going forward. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It was a wonderful session, and thank you so much, audience, for being such a wonderful audience and for those lovely questions. Thank you, Ian, Ted, Ramesh, and Suren, for this lovely session. Thank you so much.